Hello everyone! Today with this video I'm helping you answer the question: how do you design something pleasing when you cannot really go to a shop and buy colors that exactly fit your aesthetic? Because sustainable quilting is very nice, but I noticed that a lot of people struggle with color design and how to make sure that the colors work well for you and express the thing you want in a quilt. Like, do you want a happy quilt? Do you want a calming quilt? Do you want a joyful quilt? And I know how to do it. And this video, I prepared lots of materials for you and exercises where I will teach you how you can make your own design with whatever fabrics you have available. The most important friend in color theory is the color wheel. It is the basis you can use for all your designs. Because today I want to discuss 3 different styles with you. That is complementary style, working with contrast, and totally random. And all of it is possible with the coloring wheel. The interesting thing about this one is, from the book Color the Quilter's Guide by Christine Barnes, is that it gives you a color wheel with solid colors, that means no pattern, and also one with patterns. But how do you make something pleasing out of piles of fabrics? Well, to show you, I'm going to teach you 4 basic color schemes. There are more, of course, but this is a beginner class, so I'm not going to make it too difficult. The 4 color schemes are to work with complement colors light, complement dark, contrast, and random colors. And they're all based on the color wheel. With these 4 color schemes you can already do a lot of interesting things. In the future I will make like a more advanced class where you can learn to have different kind of color schemes, but these ones are enough for now. I'm going to first show you how to do it with a 4-patch. The 4-patch you've already learned in previous lessons. I teach you how to do it in the 4-patch class, but also in the patchwork class. So if you don't know yet what a 4-patch is, because you've started with the color class, start there. Simply said, 4-patch is a piece of quilting with 4 squares. There are different ways to make it. You can do it with patchwork, like we've discussed in the patchwork class, or you can make a turnover coaster, like we've discussed in the turnover coaster class, the first one. They are 4 squares, and it's a good thing, it's a good place to start with color theory, because you can see the contrast nicely. After this we're going to discuss with a 9-patch, which brings you a broader perspective of what's possible. The first thing we're going to discuss is complement light. That means that complement means that you take 2 slices of the pie to work with. Because those colors are next to each other, so they complement each other. And complement light means that you take them from the lighter side of the color wheel. In this case, yellow and orange. And you will see, if you draw 1 square yellow and the other one orange, that it's a very calming design. The thing with complementary designing is that it always calms down a room. The downside is that it can be a little bit boring. And the plus side is that it's always calming. It doesn't clash. It's designed to go well together. It doesn't have to be boring, but it has the chance of being boring. You also have complement dark. In that case you will go for the darker colors, like dark green, dark red, purple, dark blue. And then it will look like this. So the light complementary colors are good if you want like a spring vibe. The dark complementary colors are good if you want a darker color scheme. It looks like this. So again, complementary is all about taking two slices of the color wheel pie that go together. Then you have contrasting colors. That means that you pick one color of the color wheel and the color that's opposite to it. For example, purple and yellow. And the benefit of contrasting color design is that it's always eye-catching. The downside of contrasting color design is that it can feel very tired to look at. It's very busy. It can be very busy. Of course, it's again, as with the other color schemes, it's all about balance and how you design it. But it has the danger of being too busy. Like, this is very clashing. Some people love it, some people hate it. I love it. Some people find it too busy. But also, contrasting is green and red, which interesting are Christmas colors. This reminds me very much of Easter. And you also have blue and orange. Also goes very well together. Contrasting design. The fourth option you have is random. That means that you literally randomly pick colors. That is very good for scrap quilts. The downside is that it can also be very busy to look at because there's no cohesion. But it can be very fun in a scrap quilt. Later on, maybe in another class, I will explain to you how you can make a good random quilt, because completely random is never a good idea. But for now, random is going to be, for example, a green one. And you also don't necessarily try to pay attention to where on the color wheel it is. For example, a green one, a blue one. We go for orange. And we go for red. The benefit of a random color scheme is that it's very joyful and childlike. So if you want to make something that brings people joy, random is often a good way to go. But again, it can be too busy if it's too random. So these are the 4 basic color schemes. So I've shown you how you make the basic of the 4 basic color schemes. Now we're going to do it in a 9-patch shape, because when you make a 9 shape you have a little bit more room for experimentation. So I'm going to turn the page around and make our own 9 patches. That's the beauty of craft paper. You can create your own coloring plates. You can also use the ones I will provide, but I am always annoyed when I use a printer, when I have to use a printer for a class, because I don't have one. So I'm also teaching you how you can make your own practice sheets. And I really encourage you to just experiment with many different colors and shapes. You don't have to leave it at a 9-patch, of course. You can go even bigger. So we have 4 of them. Complement light, complement dark, contrast and random. And this you will really see the coloring scheme come to life. For example, you have complement light with the orange and the yellow. And we're going to start with making a standard 9-patch design, which is the checkerboard. Which is a good way to see if you like your colors together. So this is the complement light, and you see it's very interesting. It gives me spring vibes and light vibes and happy vibes, and I think if you enlarge this, it will be the perfect picnic blanket. And then you have the complement dark with the purple and the blue. And you don't have to keep to a checkerboard. If you really want to get a feel of colors, it's also advisable to try different kinds of shapes. For example, like this. And just try and play around with the colors. That's why this also is the playing with colors, to get a feel for colors class. Let's go, if you go like this. You see, it's a very different feel, this kind of pattern, but it also gives you a sense of how the colors work together. It's darker. It's more like it gives me more like a midnight vibe and a dark vibe. But I think if you, for example, have a very light house, it can be an interesting contrast. Same side, if you have the complement light, if you have a very light dark house and you add this, it will add some light. Quilting is all about balance and adding some joy and design elements to your house to make it more pop and more lively. It's all about contrast and balance. Because contrast is also a very interesting color scheme, but it can be a little bit hectic for people. Because contrast is about being bold, hip. It's also more of a young vibe often. And it also screams a bit more. I really like contrast in my designs. But if you have too much contrast, it turns tiring and busy for people often. So take care of that and play around with it. As you can see, it really pops. And so if you have a very muted color scheme in your house, having some contrast in it will really make it pop. But if you already have a lot of contrast, it might get too much if you also add a contrast quilt. Lastly, random, which is more the playful, childlike vibe. Which is very interesting to make a room look lively. For example, if you have a children's room that has a lot of light colors and beige and brown wood and stuff like that, it's very nice to add like a random scheme quilt in it to give the children something lively to play with. You will notice that it will probably become their favorite blanket to play on, because it adds that spark of joy and playfulness to the room. But maybe if you have too playful room, it will be too busy. So this is how you can play around with color schemes and with quilts, and how to incorporate quilts into your home. Because I really like the playful look of this color scheme, but it can quickly be too much. I will in the future probably make videos about how you can design with colors to make a good scrap quilt, because this is very useful for scrap quilt, but it's not very easy to get it right. It often is too busy. The smaller the quilt, the less it matters how well your colors go together. But these 4 blocks give you some tips to work with as well. And this is also the pattern of the A Taste of Quilters beginner class. So if you take that one and this one, you can make amazing coasters. Now you know the basic principles, and that's next step is we're going to incorporate it on fabrics. So, how does a color scheme like that work out in fabric? Because doing with coloring pencils is only the first step, of course. But I wanted to give you a view of how it will look in fabric. First I'm going to show you fabrics. Then I'm going to show you some finished pieces. So, for the complement light in fabrics, it, for example, works like this, which again brings me to a point that designing with fabrics is not only about colors, it's also about pattern. You give a different view to the design if you have patterned fabrics. Because this one has red, yellow and orange in it, and a bit of green, which is also complementary, because if you look at the coloring wheel, it's one size of the pie. And this yellow, this complements each other. See how calming vibe this is? So this works very well together. And if you look at the complement dark, you go for the blue and the purples. This is a light version. But if you want to go dark, You also have this one and this one. And see how the purple and the blue make a calming dark vibe together. Or if you go to the other side of the color wheel, you have green, blue and green. Both works very nicely. But again, if you go to contrast, you will have purple and white and yellow. This is the contrast. Or if you go for a dark purple. And this again shows you one principle of designing with fabrics, which is if you have pattern fabrics, it's calming to combine it with a solid, which means no pattern. But if you want to have something very hectic, you can of course combine patterns with patterns. Because for example, I have a red patterned fabric here, which is complementary with purple. And if you combine them together, color-wise it's still a nice design, but it's more busy than if you would combine it with a solid red. And random looks like this, of course. Just throw everything together. Which again is a very happy vibe, but can be a bit too busy. So this is how it looks fabric-wise. Now I'm going to show you how it looks made. We're back where we started, but now with more knowledge than we used to have. Now we know how we can use the coloring wheel as our friend and the coloring schemes we practiced to create your own pleasing quilt design. The last thing I want to show you is some examples I made. The turnaround coaster, which you can learn how to make in another class of the Summer Joyfulness package. As you can see, first we had talked about the complementary light color scheme. This is what it became. And this block also shows very nicely what happens if you play around with colors and patterned fabrics and solids. You can keep in mind, if you combine solids with patterned, it's always nice. We can go more into how to design patterns and solids fabric later. And as you can see, it has a very spring-like, joyful sense. We talked also about the complementary dark. These two are an example of that. One with purple and blue and one with green and purple. You can see it has a more dark, wintry vibe. We also talked about contrast. These are examples of the contrast with the purple and the yellow. I didn't do the red and yellow and green because I don't like Christmas that much. But this, you know, you see it pops and it has spring vibes and Easter vibes. Lastly, we did the random. This is a random example. As you can see, it doesn't have anything of your eyes to land on, but it has a very joy-like, childlike atmosphere. So, putting them all a little bit together. And this one, ooh, this is not scripted, as you can see. So it didn't go well immediately. Here you have them together. Next step is now for you to start practicing this with your own fabrics you have. Just put out the coloring pencils and enjoy yourself. And you will notice that if you enjoy the creative process, it's always easier than you think, and you will learn while you play. And life and creativity and a hobby is all about having fun. So, if you still have any questions, feel free to let me know through email or whatever way you find to reach me. And I will see you in the next class. Society stress will be our treasure.